Panama, a country slightly larger than Switzerland, deserves to be known for more than just its canal, as impressive as that may be. In a world where natural wilderness is increasingly rare and indigenous people are gradually disappearing, this wonderfully preserved country is well worth a visit. Its luxuriant nature, the great cultural diversity of its tribal people, and its rich historic locations are all part of a journey of discovery blessed by the trade winds from the Pacific and the Caribbean. Not to mention the special atmosphere around its volcano. Panama City is the country's capital and one of Central America's most cosmopolitan cities, with a population which is a blend of people from the Caribbean and the Americas, and skyscrapers which are a testament to the vitality of its ever-growing economy. This metropolis is home to 880,000 of the country's 3.8 million inhabitants. The city lies in the south of the country, on the shores of the Pacific Ocean. The new town is in the east and the old in the west. The road bypasses the sea at Casco Viejo. It was here at the foot of Ancon Hill that the Spaniards moved the capital after the original town was destroyed in 1671. This location was easier to defend, as the coral reef prevented ships from approaching, and the city was surrounded by significant battlements. When construction of the canal began in 1904, the population boom pushed the city's limits eastwards, and Casco Viejo was gradually abandoned by its bourgeois families and became a shanty town. Restoring the quarter took time, and although it was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2003, work is still ongoing. The locals spend much of their time on the balconies or on the pavements outside the old homes to make the most of the gentle, refreshing breeze. Casco Viejo's architectural style is representative of its past. Colonial styles and Art Deco side by side in an ever-bubbling melting pot. At the tip of the old city, a monument in the Plaza de Francia commemorates the great canal building project and the 25,000 workers who died in the process, most of them from yellow fever and malaria. It was during this period that the Cuban Carlos Finlay discovered that mosquitoes carried and transmitted the yellow fever virus and set about finding a way to eradicate it. To the west, Amador Bay is one of the city's most important districts, home to an ostentatious building designed by Frank Gehry, which houses the Biodiversity Museum. But it is also home to the Pacific entrance to the Panama Canal and the Puente de las Americas. Panama la Vieja, which is now the Old Town, was founded in 1519 by the conquistador Pedro Arraiz Davila and 100 or so settlers. It was the first European colony on the Pacific coast, a fishing village which soon became a bridgehead for the exploration and conquest of Peru, and a transition point for plundered gold heading for Spain. 2 years later, the city acquired the title of Royal City, and its prosperity made it an object of desire for pirates in particular. In 1671, the Welsh pirate Henry Morgan and his 1,200 men sacked the town, after which the Spanish left and established Casco Viejo 8 kilometers to the west. Central Avenue is a link between Casco Viejo and the more modern districts. It's the main artery of the city's heart, where people come to shop or simply stroll around. Plantain is one of the country's most popular vegetables. It closely resembles a banana, to which it's related, but it's much bigger and is usually deep fried. When Panama won its independence from Colombia in 1903, its unique geographical situation fueled the capital's dynamism. It is this cultural melting pot that contributes to the city's energy. The carnival, which takes place in February, is one byproduct of this blend of cultures and is one of the country's biggest events, which people prepare for all year. At the edge of Casco Viejo, on Balboa Avenue, the fish market is not to be missed. It's one of the city's emblematic places, where every morning there's a scramble as the day's catch is unloaded all along the quayside. In a country with coasts on the shores of 2 oceans, it's inevitable that fish should be a staple of everyday life. The market was built in 1995. With technical assistance from Japan, and supplies the whole town with all of the sea's bounty. There's a great variety of fish to be found. Just off the coast, they catch red carp weighing between 15 and 50 kilos, or groupers, which are often over 40 kilos. Further out to sea, they fish for mahi-mahi, tarpon and wahoo, while marlin is hunted for sport. When its marine stocks started to dwindle, Panama successfully developed its fish farming industry, especially for shrimp. Crustaceans are also hugely popular and form an important part of ceviche, the traditional Latin American dish made from raw fish. Sliced onions, chilies, coriander and lemon juice are also part of a recipe which is popular at all hours of the day. Surrounded by restaurants, the fish market is a perfect excuse to come and wander along the seafront, which is a link to the modern city. It's very busy at the end of the day, and the water nearby helps cool things down. Even before the idea of a canal was mentioned, the Panama Isthmus was always a strategic crossing point between the 2 coasts of America. 2 years after the beginning of the California gold rush in 1848, the country founded its railway company, and in 1869 created a very successful transcontinental line. First imagined by the Emperor Charles V, the concept of a sea route joining the 2 oceans was always seen as the perfect solution. After having considered the idea of a Nicaraguan canal, it was Ferdinand de Lesseps, flushed with the success of his Suez Canal, who threw himself into the epic project in 1882. A mere 9 months into the venture, an earthquake caused a collapse in the share price of the company created to build the canal. not to mention the ravages of yellow fever and the devastating floods caused by the Rio Chagres during the rainy season. Gustave Eiffel devised a system of locks which would help tame the great river. But in 1889, due to a catalogue of setbacks and bad business decisions, the company went bust. The Americans came to the rescue in 1903, investing sufficient funds for another 10 years of works. In fact, the canal zone was under American administration until 1999. The canal is now 77 kilometers long and links Panama City to Colon in the Caribbean Sea. It's used by 14,000 vessels every year, and on average 40 a day, from the smallest yachts to the greatest container ships, tailored to be able to fit through the locks. Here at Miraflores, electric trains on either side of the ship help to hold it straight and prevent it hitting the canal's concrete walls. The ship's own engines provide the momentum. Along with tourism, the canal is one of the country's main financial resources. It's used by 5% of the world's maritime traffic. It has a turnover of 1.6 billion euros. Some cargo ships paying a fee of up to 200,000 euros. Since 2007, vast new building projects have been in progress to expand the locks and allow the passage of even greater vessels. It takes an average of 9 hours for a ship to negotiate the 77 kilometers of the canal and its locks. Pilot boats and tugs take turns to keep the ships on course and prevent any mishaps. As soon as you get away from the immediate vicinity of the canal, nature regains the upper hand. Several freshwater lakes are used to supply the locks and are also a boon for the wildlife, which has been quick to colonize them. 40% of Panama's territory is covered in tropical forest, of which a large proportion is primeval. Soberania National Park is a protected zone of 220 square kilometers, which enjoys a tropical climate, yet lies only 25 kilometers from the center of the capital city. The park is home to over 200 species of mammal and around 400 bird species. The bizarre-looking giant armadillo, with its armor formed of articulated bony plates covered in horn that covers the creature's back from head to tail, is a gentle loner that lives on insects. Far noisier are the howler monkeys, who are rarely seen, and whose capacity for volume is inversely proportional to their size. It's only from high up that you get a true notion of the extent and density of the forest canopy. Carrying on to the northeast leads to the province of Colón and the Caribbean coast. In colonial times, it was an affluent province, thanks to the trade in gold and silver, and pirates were always on the prowl. Nowadays, Mother Nature has reclaimed the area from the vestiges of the Spanish Empire. At that time, Portobelo was the country's biggest port. It's hard to imagine that once upon a time, this quiet fishing village was the only passage for shipments of gold from Peru that the mule trains would then take to the capital. San Felipe Church is nothing remarkable to look at, but it is home to a legendary statue of a Black Christ. Legend has it that in 1671, a Spanish galleon coming from Cartagena sailed into the seas off Portobelo. It was caught in a great storm and sought shelter in the bay. Many heavy crates were thrown overboard, and when the locals found the Cristo Nazareno, they came to the conclusion that he wanted to stay in Portobelo and placed their guest on the altarpiece of the church. The Spanish built a series of fortifications to defend the bay, the biggest and best placed of which is still Fort San Geronimo, which could train its 18 cannons across the entire bay. The customs house, built in 1630, has been preserved in its original condition. This was where the galleons had to register their cargo of gold before heading back to Europe. In 1820 came the treaty which outlawed slavery. At this time, 90% of the population was black, hailing from San Domingo, but also from Africa, and in the case of Portobelo, mainly from the Congo. Each year, after the carnival, a festival takes place where all forms of artistic expression remember the period when slaves who had fled into the jungle lived in small communities. Photographer Sandra Eleta created a workshop, the Taylor Portobelo, where the local villagers come and express themselves through what is known as Congo art. Its success has exceeded all expectations. Everything is very colorful, very expressive, and the gallery sells some of the work produced here. One of the most famous artists in Portobelo, perpetuating the memory of the Congos, Alberto is a likable character. He plays instruments he has made himself, painstakingly carving them out of coconut tree trunks with his machete.
Until now, we've tried to keep the Congo's memory alive. But the problem nowadays is that the young people aren't interested in tradition, especially that of the Congos, and it's gradually getting lost.
A little further down the same street, in the Villanueva home, Yanitza is preparing a traditional meal eaten by families at the weekend. Arroz con coco y pescado, rice with fish and coconut.
We use a seafood stock, a little bit of chili, salt, mix it well. I give the coconut a good squeeze to get all the juice out. There we are.
In the pan, dried beans are gently simmering with the rice. The fish needs to be fried for a good 10 minutes. The avocados here are pretty large and are eaten with many dishes. On Sundays, Yanitza is happy to wear a polera she spent many hours making for the carnival. The American occupation has left some imprints here. The bus drivers often co-own their vehicles and personalize and decorate them in often spectacular manner. Those in Portobelo are renowned countrywide as being some of the most creative. Moving northeast along the coast, we see the forest regaining the upper hand. Just a few years ago, to go into Kuna territory meant several hours walking to reach Chiriquí. The Kuna are an Amerindian ethnic group indigenous to Panama and Colombia. The majority of the tribes are thought to have emigrated from Colombia in the 16th century and came here to settle throughout the length and breadth of the San Blas archipelago. When Panama achieved independence in 1903, the Kunas created their own autonomous territory with its own laws. The Kunas' population is estimated to be 70,000 strong. 32,000 live on the islands of the archipelago, 8,000 on the mainland, while the rest of the tribes live around the capital. Almost all the supplies are taken to the islands from here in Chiriquí, as nothing much grows there other than coconuts. The archipelago consists of 400 islands, of which the Kuna occupy around 40. Comings and goings are constant, and the motorized canoe is an essential tool for getting around. The Kuna have been successful in adapting not only to their new status, but also to island life, when they were not originally a seagoing people. In 1954, following a long struggle, the Panamanian government accorded the San Blas Islands the status of comarca, meaning reserve. The smaller islands are only temporarily occupied by families during the coconut harvest. Even until recent times, the coconut was the principal resource and the keystone of the economy. It was even used as legal tender. Fishing remains an important resource for the whole archipelago. In a territory controlled by a border post, the Kuna are carefully opening their doors to tourism. The islands have undeniable assets, but the Kuna religion is inextricably linked to nature. Prayers and chants pay homage to the winds, to the surrounding beauty. The Kuna consider that they and nature are part of the same entity. A limited number of the islands are fitted out for foreign visitors who are expected to observe a number of rules. In no circumstances is any foreigner permitted to own the slightest plot of land. The Kuna have a philosophy based around veneration of the goddess mother Pachamama. Theirs is a matriarchal society. Land is owned by women and handed down from mother to daughter. The men are warriors, defenders of the land, and are honored as such. They also manage the workforce. The women wear very bright clothing and adorn themselves with multicolored bracelets called winnies all over their arms and legs. According to local belief, these great bracelets form geometrical motifs which protect the wearer from evil spirits. Gilberto now lives in Panama City, but often returns to his homeland.
Normally, almost 90% the Kuna diet is seafood. It's definitely because we live in the ocean. So we don't, mostly, I can say maybe 10% the people eat like a chicken, but we don't eat the meat because we don't have any cows in the mainland. No cows, nothing. Yeah.
The emblematic Kuna canoe is carved out of a coconut tree over the course of a month. Despite efforts to make them watertight, they still take in water, and coconut shells are used for bailing them out. From their tenderest age, children learn the mysteries of navigation using small models. The Kuna live in communities made up of family groups. Space is at a premium, like here on Corbiski Island, Pelican Island. The dwellings vary in size depending on the size of the family, but they almost always consist of 3 huts around a patio. If the home is by the water's edge, a small wooden pontoon makes up the set. The biggest space serves as a living room by day, and at night the whole family hangs out its hammocks here. The thing that has protected the Kuna from foreign blandishments and the siren calls of big money is their highly conservative rule that everyone should work for the common good. The supply of water, for example, is highly organized on every island. The women spend many hours sewing molas. Entirely made by hand, molas are rectangles of fabric which used to adorn the blouses of traditional female dress. As single items, molas are collected by artists and are starting to be exhibited in some big museums. A mola is made up of several layers of colored cotton. Each layer is visible through tiny windows delicately cut out of the upper layers. Everything is extremely finely cut, and you can occasionally see a figurative picture surrounded by geometrical shapes.
Yeah, mostly the Kunas people, it's like a society. They like to live all together, like they have the union, you know. It's nice sometimes we can see many very crowded in the small community, small island, sorry.
While the television set and mobile phone have made an abrupt intrusion into people's homes, everyday life is still focused on the sea and the great outdoors. Even on an island as small as Corbiski, there is a school with 3 classrooms, so primary school-aged children can be educated. Older children need to go to the main island, where they will board during the week. Sadly, the future of these island communities is threatened by the inexorable rise in the sea level. A coral reef which protected part of the archipelago has also been seriously damaged by some of the locals in their attempts to raise the ground level to protect their homes. A recent meeting of the Kuna Council has already sought to encourage families to consider moving to the mainland.
Now the people is talking about the global warming. The water is getting up, you know. So the Kuna say, we don't know, maybe yes, maybe no, when. But some couple communities, they are thinking to make new houses in the mainland or in the further. They live house before, long time ago.
Karti Sugdub Island is an important one in this part of the archipelago, featuring a number of businesses and several schools. The community has an important place in Kuna day-to-day life and is managed by the Congreso. This in turn is run by the Sahila, who could be considered as traditional chieftains. Recognized for their wisdom, they will use this to help the villagers solve everyday problems. Their main role, however, is to keep tradition alive. This has been handed down orally from generation to generation for centuries. The Congreso House is where decisions are made and problems solved. The locals meet there around 5 p.m. to discuss potential issues or problems that may need to be solved, and for which their Sahila and his cohorts will calmly attempt to find a solution. The chief, Luis Murphy, is highly respected for his wisdom. He has been re-elected every year for the last 9 years. In the east, Darien province contains the country's greatest primeval forest. 50 years ago, 70% of Panama was still covered by woodland. Today, that figure is less than 40%. Deforestation remains a major cause for concern as it threatens both the fauna and the Emberá's traditional habitat. The Emberá were originally one of Colombia's primitive peoples. They also live in eastern Panama. In order to reach the closest Emberá villages, one has to follow the Chagres River upstream. During the dry season, the journey up the river requires a considerable amount of effort to avoid the high riverbed and other obstacles. The village of Emberá Drua has around 50 inhabitants. It's late morning and village chief Euclides Ruiz and a group of women are busy catching and preparing fish. Fried plantain is a very popular vegetable with the Emberá. The village sits above the river. During the rainy season, the water level can rise very quickly. During the last quarter of the 20th century, the Emberá abandoned their traditional attire and began to wear Western dress. However, the advent of indigenous tourism has encouraged a return of traditional costume and enhanced its profile at home and abroad. Plantains are sliced before being crushed and fried. The village is relatively self-sufficient in food production, but its location within a national park precludes the use of traditional slash-and-burn farming methods. The community has turned to tourism to compensate for this shortfall in resources and started to promote its basket making.
Hay momentos que la parte difícil es que
we were told all sorts of things about tourism and all the whys and wherefores that we should try it. And I think, quite honestly, it's been a positive experience. But I am really incapable of telling you whether or not the next generation will be able to develop tourism and at the same time maintain our traditions.
Things have not always been so peaceful. Constant migration and shamanic practices hindered by proximity to the modern world have often caused considerable tensions. Tattooing is one of the Emberá's traditions. These geometrical designs are made from the juice of a tree known by the Emberá as the jaguar. They may have some cultural significance or indicate allegiance to a certain group, or may have a purely aesthetic purpose.
In my view, tourism is profitable. We have small groups coming here for the day, and we can also make money from our handicrafts and our basket work in particular. And some of the money we make is put back into the community to finance the village infrastructure.
We now head to the west of the country, where Chiriquí province sits on the border with Costa Rica, its stunning landscapes unlike anything else in Panama. This is a rich volcanic land, with its mangroves by the sea and its fertile soil on the higher ground near the volcano. When the Spanish landed here at the beginning of the 15th century, they were amazed to discover that there were many tribes populating the area, sometimes separated by a mere few kilometers and yet having no contact with each other. All of them were very badly treated until the 17th century. Some were decimated. David is the nation's second city, and Boca Chica is the point of departure for boat trips to the mangrove swamps, fishing trips, or visiting the islands of the Gulf of Chiriquí. From here, boats head out to sea to fish for marlin, sea bream, or even tuna, whose stocks here are relatively healthy. The islands of the Gulf of Chiriquí National Marine Park are dominated by the volcano on the highlands. The majority of these 25 islands are surrounded by coral reefs. These protected islands are also a haven for a number of bird colonies, sea turtles who come here once a year to lay their eggs, and occasionally monkeys. Unlike the Caribbean coast, tourism on the Pacific coast is still a recent development. This hotel on Boca Brava Island is one exception. It has been owned by a succession of long-haul sailors who have dropped anchor in the bay. The latest of these, New Zealander David Fraser, was struck by the similarities with his native land. The authorities work very closely with the local tribal population, who were able to reclaim their land after the privations of the colonial era. Some of them are descended from the Ngabe Bugle, who are more usually found higher up near the volcano. Heading towards Boquete in the highlands, these arid plains are the foothills of the volcano. These high plains seduced 19th century visitors from abroad who were much more benevolent than the colonists who had arrived a few hundred years before. They were attracted by these fertile, well-irrigated lands and their abundance of flora. They were mainly peasants from Europe and the US who settled here alongside the primeval people who lived here, such as the Ngabe and Bugle tribes. Sitting at the foot of the 3,475-meter-high Baru volcano, Boquete and its fields are at an altitude of 1,700 meters. They benefit from the country's coolest temperatures. This attracts hundreds of tourists when the rest of Panama swelters in the humid heat. The majority of the fruit and vegetables sold in Panama are cultivated in these valleys, whose terraces are not always easily accessible. As well as traditional vegetables, the area produces tubers and roots which are not found anywhere else, like otue roots, which are like a kind of big radish, a type of cassava known as yucca, and yams, a kind of slightly starchy sweet potato. The presence of the volcano guarantees regular rainfall, and since the 1990s, agriculture has been focused more on quality than quantity. This is the Cerro Brujo Gourmet Restaurant, run by chef Patricia Miranda Allen, one of Panama's greatest chefs, who around 10 years ago made the decision to leave the capital for her native region and make the most of the richness of its produce. The restaurant is a success, with a menu using ingredients of the finest quality. Like this sapote, a fruit more commonly known locally as the mame, with its remarkable texture and flavor. Does it grow around here?
No, it grows further down where it's warmer, near Concepcion. It grows there. I opened this restaurant 15 years ago. I have organic suppliers, and I grow some produce myself, like herbs and spices. There are a lot of plants that grow here that you will not find in any other region of Panama. We have a lot of endemic vegetables. There's a huge variety. And that's what allows my cuisine to be so different. This reduction of coconut milk comes from a coconut which grows on the Atlantic coast and has a slightly salty flavor. It's the only variety that gives the reduction this specific taste. I use it to season my salads.
It would be a tall order to bring the flavor and freshness of this salad to life on screen. Any customers making the effort to visit the slopes of this volcano rarely leave disappointed. In the early 90s, Panama's coffee had a modest reputation, until the day when the plantation started growing the Ethiopian variety called geisha, which took a remarkable liking to this environment. Geisha has become one of the global market's most sought-after beans, selling for prices often exceeding €350 a kilo. Hector Vargas Milagrosa plantation grows a number of coffee varieties, including geisha.
Coffee grows well on volcanic soil. It gives it a specific flavor and it tastes different.
Tito, as he is known here, is not only a connoisseur but also a very clever engineer. He himself built all the machines he uses to prepare the coffee beans, from the grinding to the roasting. Tito has developed a very clever system for drying the beans, which makes the most of the volcano's sunny periods.
In order to get the right quality, the soil is crucial. The process is important too, as well as the natural drying methods, and that is the only way we can achieve this exceptional flavor. This coffee is the equivalent of a good champagne.
Here in this room, Tito tastes the fruits of his labor and experiments with different degrees of roasting in this small rotating oven of his own invention, where he will cook the beans to a lesser or greater degree, depending on the customer it is destined for. The Americans like a very quick roast for a milder flavor. The French prefer a medium roast, while the Italians prefer a longer roasting process for a stronger flavor.
It's a vocation, definitely, but it's also a skill and a traditional craft which allows me to produce coffee of this quality.
At the end of the day in Boquete, everybody leaves the farms and fields and meets up to listen to music or hang out with their friends over a drink. This is also the moment when the volcano decides to unveil part of its summit as a conclusion to a journey rich in discovery and experience, which has given us a new insight into this fascinating country.